The general election is around the corner. Wyoming residents have an opportunity to send a new congressperson to Washington. Will it be Liz Cheney or Ryan Greene? We asked both candidates for interviews. The Greene campaign responded by inviting us to their family business headquarters in Rock Springs. That's where Patrick Wolfenbarger talked to the candidate about issues vital to our state.
Can you tell us, for those who may not be familiar with you, your background, why you're running for Congress?
Oh, sure. Yeah, my name's Ryan Greene, and I'm 33, from Rock Springs. Born and raised here in Rock Springs. Been here my entire life. Graduated from Rock Springs High School in 2000, and after college, I married my high school sweetheart, Lindsay. We've been together for 12 years, and we've got 2 little kids. I've got a 10-year-old son and a 7-year-old daughter. Basically, you know, in 1998, my dad, we started a family business with 1 welding truck. We sold everything we had but the kitchen sink to get the business up and running. And it was a family business. My mom did the books. My brothers and I, we swept the shop and cleaned the tools, and my dad did the weldings. But over the next 18 years, the business grew. And we grew from 1 employee to over 250 employees and a presence in 3 different states. We have a presence in Pittsburgh, we have a presence in North Dakota, and of course our headquarters is here in Rock Springs. And so my role with the company grew along with the business. I started out as a roustabout and then went to a welder, to a project manager, and today I'm the operations director for Greene's Energy Services. And it's an energy services company, and so what that means is we provide labor and equipment to the oil and gas fields, to the coal mines, to the fertilizer plants and the renewable sector. And a lot of people ask me, they say, you know, why did you get into this race? And really for me, you know, it's personal. It's because, you know, this is our 3rd bust in 60 years. And we're a small company. So I know all of our employees. I know their names. I know their families. I know their stories. I know their struggles. And when this last bust hit, like so many, you know, Wyoming businesses, we had to let some good folks go. And, you know, I was the guy that had to do that. So I had to call these folks into my office and tell them that because of Wyoming's economy, they no longer have a job here. You know, I remember one time I had to let a guy go, a friend of mine, and then I had to coach his kid that night at baseball. So the policies that are rolling out of D.C., the decisions, they affect me personally. I see the outcomes of them. And so, you know, if we don't start talking about the issues and start, you know, advancing the conversation, then I believe we're accepting another bust in 60 years. Or I'm sorry, in 20 years.
So you have a challenge as a Democratic candidate in Wyoming, which is heavily leans to the Republican side. How are you trying to meet the challenges to get your name out, to get these issues discussed that you are advocating?
Yeah, it's not an easy task. We've got a long uphill battle, but we're going to fight every day. And we need to get in as many places and talk to as many folks as possible. But Wyoming will elect a Democrat. 3 of our last 5 governors have been Democrats, and they've done a great job balancing energy development with conservation. And it's got to be the right kind of Democrat. And I believe I have those same characteristics as Governor Dave Friedenthal and Mike Sullivan. So it's an uphill battle, but you know, ever since the primary, our strategy was to pivot and go after Republican voters. But now they're coming to us. They know I support the Second Amendment, and they know that I work in the energy industry, that it's not a campaign stop for me, but these are customers, they're clients, they're friends and neighbors, so they know that they'll have a friend in Washington, which I believe we so desperately need.
Now you talked about economic issues. Economic diversity is real important to the state on a state level. What can you see on the federal level that Congress can do, what you can do?
This has already been done before. There's some eastern states that have came together and they formed a regional development program. It's a partnership between the federal, state, and local governments. And what they did was they were able to successfully bring their tax dollars back into their states for things like infrastructure and healthcare, export, and manufacturing. Now these taxes, this tax money, has been put aside for these projects. And Wyoming can participate in those programs to bring healthcare and infrastructure into our state, because I believe this is a great state to start a business. You know, it's a tax-friendly state. It's a great state to bring in new industries, but it starts with modern infrastructure. You know, I was up in Fremont County the other day, and I talked with a gentleman. He was welding, and he got a piece of metal in his eye, and the surgery they couldn't perform there in Riverton, so he had to drive 2 hours to Casper. But by the time he got to Casper, he lost his eye. So when we're talking about bringing industries into Wyoming, you know, we've got to have good, solid health care for these rural communities. You know, infrastructure and communications is another big one. We were doing an interview on the eastern part of the state, and the lady who was conducting the interview, she told us that sometimes late at night, if she's trying to upload her story to the server and another member of the staff is uploading pictures or a story, the server crashes. So she has to drive 25 miles to upload her work. Now, we take this stuff for granted, but these things need to be in place in order for us to attract new industries into our state.
There are proposals for how we can use our public lands better. Some concepts include selling public lands as a way to generate income for the state that's needed in these times of reduced revenues. What do you look at in these proposals that you want to react to?
Yeah, well, I strongly disagree with the state transfer of public lands. When we take a look at our number 2 economic driver here in Wyoming is tourism, hunting, angling, and recreation use of our public lands. So from an economic standpoint, they're very valuable to Wyoming. But from a quality of life standpoint, they're even more valuable to Wyoming. You know, we hunt, we fish, we camp. So I stand against the state takeover of public land. We've seen this time and time again. We turn our hunting grounds into private homes. We sell the land, especially when we can't pay for it. And I believe that's an attack on our freedom, is trying to take away the lands and sell these lands, because once it's gone, our access is gone for good. So I would fight the state takeover. And again, you know, when we're talking about being in an economic crunch like we are now, with being a $680 million shortfall from the state of Wyoming, we don't have the money to maintain these lands. We don't have the funds to, you know, keep the trails open or fight an unpredictable cost in wildfires. So what happens is we sell these lands and we lose our access. So I'm strongly against the state takeover. I support the agreement that we have in place now, and that's always worked since 1890.
You talked about some proposals that of joint planning. What are other, you know, higher education, the workforce seems to be a major issue and that the state is struggling with right now. How can the federal government help?
We need to take a look at what we can do to retrain and reposition some of these out-of-work miners and things like that. Now, again, this has been done. In the early 80s, when the uranium mines closed in Jeffrey City, the federal government stepped in and they provided tax dollars and funds to send these miners back to school. And they could learn, you know, a trade in electrical work or welding or mechanic or carpentry. I had a friend that went through this program. He was laid off as a miner. They retrained him as a welder, and he worked for the next 35 years in Wyoming's economy. So these are things that we could look at bringing in. Now we look at the coal industry, and we know that the demand for coal is down, and we've laid off 600 of our friends and neighbors. You know, in the president's budget, there was the Power Plus plan. And this was money that is set aside to help communities that have been impacted by the loss of coal jobs. But again, you know, Wyoming doesn't want to look at that if it's tied to this president. And so, you know, we send a statement that it's his fault, but we're not willing to help you. And so I think that type of thinking, we've got to set that aside. We need to quit reacting to things, and I think, you know, start responding to these. The Integrated Test Center up there in Gillette, I believe it's a great idea. But again, I think it's a decade too late. You know, if Wyoming's the #1 coal producer in the United States, we should lead this effort, especially with the University of Wyoming. So when we talk about economic diversity, I think we need to do it inside the energy industry and outside the energy industry. We talked about outside the energy industry with bringing new industries in, and you know, to add on to that, we should stop turning away business. You know, Tesla put out for bid a gigafactory that they wanted to build for their cars. and they put it out to 6 states, and Wyoming didn't even bid on it. We didn't even submit a bid. But inside the energy industry, we need to take a look at diversifying that as well. Because the reality is the market is driving the demand for coal. You know, coal's not going anywhere. It powers 1/3 of our nation. But 150 countries are investing in cleaner energy. You know, there's a pledge out there. It's called the RE100. And what it is 58 of the world's largest companies have pledged to go 100% renewable, most of them by 2020. And so these are companies like Walmart and Facebook and Starbucks, Google, Nike, Johnson & Johnson, major companies. And so it's critically important that we understand this, especially our next congressman, because it doesn't matter if you are the vice president's daughter, you're not going to tell Walmart what energy products they can buy. But the good news is Wyoming, we are blessed with all of them. You know, we have wind and solar and coal and natural gas and uranium. We have it all here. But we need to sell the market what it's buying. And we need a congressman that's willing to support all of our energy producers.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Ryan.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
The Cheney campaign has not yet responded to our request for an interview.